Hello, I am the awkward GM Corbin. I use he, him pronouns, and I hope you're having fun. I recently have been planning my Curseborne actual play that I'm planning to do on Onyx Path Publishing. I have been doing a lot of planning over the past few weeks. I have probably been like straining my brain cells on this one. Have you been following along? So far, I'm doing Accursed in Boston as my game. I've got 3 players so far. One who's playing a House Balthorite, a 8 hands, and a Battleground Angel. Now, I do have a video that I need to edit at some point. That is my wife going through and helping me pick out the different families and where they're going to be. Excuse me, sorry, in Boston. And I am going to today is a little bit different, actually. I really want to get into building antagonists. One thing I really like to do for Curseborne and a lot of other games, to be honest, is planning out more interesting NPCs and characters to go have my players go up against, because whenever I play role-playing games, and this is especially true for games that are more or less like Mind's Eye Theater, but also games like Dungeons and Dragons, for some reason, I get into my head about how combat is run, specifically in regards to, I would say, how it feels when you're going up against the enemies. Is combat feeling dynamic? Is it feeling punchy? Does it feel like it's a challenge for your players, or does it feel very trivial? And that's something that has been a balancing act for me in a lot of my games, mainly because a lot of players will end up min-maxing, of course, which you have to account for to some extent. But the main issue I tend to have is combat is I have my longsword, I run up to the enemy, and then we just start like dueling like this, and then I go to the next enemy after I defeat that and keep going like this. It doesn't feel like the environment matters. It does feel a bit like you're kind of in it doesn't matter where you are effectively in a white room where you are running up against something and not having to worry about other factors. So when I used to play D&D 5e, the way you would make adjustments is you'd be like, oh, they're fighting on a ship. Let's throw in some elements of the ship so that players have environmental hazards that they have to deal with. Maybe the mast of the ship is uncontrolled or something and is swinging around and hitting people nearby. That was one I really liked. I felt very creative when I came up with that. Another one is something like we're fighting on a tower, which means if someone gets too close to the edge, they have a risk of falling off. Or another one might be just a lot of like rubble and terrain that is causing some issues. So a strategy a lot of range combatants would do is they would take cover behind some rocks or something, but also they could be on the other side of a ravine, or they could be on the other side of some like rough terrain, so that people who want to get into melee are going to have a harder time getting into that melee. For a modern game, that isn't always the case. For instance, in this game, people have access to guns a lot more easily than they would in, say, a game where you are playing all melee characters. And usually in a modern setting, I don't find people wanting to play melee characters as frequently. That could just be my own experience. I do know if I'm playing like Werewolf the Forsaken or something, we tend to do have a lot of like I'm gonna punch you type people, because that's sort of what werewolf is built around. I am I am thinking that people will more gravitate towards firearms, which means we're gonna have a lot of shootouts from behind cover and things of that nature, possibly. That's why I come up with weird characters that have different ways of movement. You have things like teleportation, or if you're familiar with something like, I guess, World of Warcraft or Charmed, there's blinking or teleporting, where or winking, which is is it winking? I forget. Warlock can just sort of teleport a short distance and things of that nature. So you can have those types of elements in designing your enemies. Now, what I usually do for my character creations, for my NPC character creation, is I like to have like little stat blocks, and I make them in. Now, let me see if it's actually showing up properly. Yeah, it's showing up all right here. I'll remove that so it's a little bit bigger for y'all. So I have some stat blocks here for the various different characters. This is a face ripper, which I made for my game. Uh, it does have a little description I made. It has its name as well as the stat line here. Now, the qualities and the powers and the weapons, I've sort of all figured out what qualities and all that they'll have. However, I haven't put the information in this particular stat block here, just because I don't want to be sharing everything from the Curseborne manuscript on stream. Normally, I will just like copy and paste from the PDF and put it in here so that I have it as a quick reference for myself when I run these types of games. I really enjoy having small character stat blocks more often than not. If you can boil down a stat block to the basics of what you need, you're golden usually. Now let's see. I did try to make a bigger version of this face ripper down here, which is a mannequin, but I haven't figured out if I am going to expand upon that yet. It's a work in progress, and oftentimes I'm not going to utilize a stat block. I might have character concept already, and so I have here, for instance, Leo Powell, who will be head of the Lion Equity Group, and this way it's like a shell corporation that he can hide behind. And he is going to be linked to these mannequins ripping people's face off. And I'm going to say it's in the old Dedham Mall, which doesn't exist. Technically, it kind of does. There's this like 3-person, not 3-person, like this one sort of facility down the street from Legacy Place that has like, I think it had like a Burlington coat factory, a GameStop, and like Old Navy or something. But now it's pretty much dead. I say it's pretty much dead. It's still active as far as I know. But I'm building this out as if it were a bigger facility, a bigger mall. And if you ever walk around dead malls, which I've done upon occasion, they are pretty creepy because it's this space that you're so used to being full of people being just completely empty. And the storefronts, typically, either you have like the storefront has like that giant billboard with an advertisement for another store in the building or coming soon type stuff. But when I went to, I think it was the Nanuet Mall down in New York, they had like all the windows were painted painted white and stuff. It was like so creepy compared to everywhere else. And there's a recent mall I went to, I forget where that one is, where it was like the only thing left was like a Barnes and Noble, and if you like walk through the mall, there's just like all the stores are empty, and there's pieces of like pieces of like broken fixtures and things like that are just sort of sitting in there to languish because no one bought the storefront. I think typically it's it might be a some sort of tax thing about not filling the stores. I know a lot of places are using their I think it was Adam Ruins Everything that talked about how a lot of these storefronts are losing, like a lot of these malls used to be a tax haven, and now the people who were using it as a tax haven have kind of like given up on it or are trying to turn it into other things so that they can still protect their money. It's crazy stuff. Just want to double check that I'm actually live. Always happens with this stuff is I always think I'm live when I'm not. Oh, no, I am. In any case, probably see my concurrent viewers go up by like a little thing. I'm a weirdo. I'm a weirdo when it comes to building antagonists too. Now, I have this idea for this guy who runs a shell corporation that is linked to various accursed related locations. The Old Dedham Mall is one of these locations. Another place is going to be and this one may be, it's going to be a convention hall. I think it could be the BECC, BEC, BECE, or whatever. Excuse me. Now, there is a convention center in Boston that is pretty popular. Problem is, it's not popular 24/7, which I think is a perfect place for a liminal zone that pretends to be a geek convention. And that's what's sort of the thing that pops off on my brain because I'm a I'm a geek, so those are the types of conventions I like. Have a bunch of various games that people like to play that don't exist. Maybe you have a bunch of panelists that don't exist as well. Games that don't exist or that hurt people. Panelists who have died, who have passed away decades ago. You could always have it be a zombie panel too. I like leaning back a little. I like going like this. Mm. That's a possibility. There are supermarkets that tend to go out of business. Possibility of a location like that. I do like to think of more physical antagonists, though. Let's split this up. We've got liminalities here. And we should have some enemies. Now, there are a bunch of enemies in the back of the Curseborne PDF here. I'm not going to show them specifically, but I can show you the adversary list here. Yeah. Oh, you can't really see it. I'll bring it up a little bit more, maybe. There we go. So I'm looking at the bottom of the PDF. So we have minions, cursed mortals, sorry, mundane people, and strange creatures and shattered spaces. Let's look at minions for the first part. Now, minions are quite easy, are usually the more easily defeated of the creatures, you might say. You have situations like there is the cuckoo, who is akin to the cuckoo bird, which I think lays its eggs in other birds' nests. That's not one that I'm looking to run though. Drones are a generic enemy type that I will probably be using a lot of. They are mortals who have been fed on until they've been sucked dry of their soul, essentially. Then you have hunting beasts. Hunting beasts are animals that have been designed to hunt accursed. Monster traps are, can't even remember now. Monster traps. Magic and influence of a battleground. Everything. Sometimes about for. Oh, these are items that are anti-accursed, basically. So you have something akin to a door that is upset about being near a liminal space. So that's a good one. The Night Whistler, can't remember that. Wretched Isopods. I remember that. I think I remember those. Those are kind of like little creatures. Hostworm is something that actually is like a parasite that will hook into a curse. Mundane people, we have cops, cultists, expulsionists, who are your sort of exorcists. Horror streamer. Horror streamer are people who stream like haunted houses, things of that nature. You have Sisters of the Cross, street criminals. Definitely a way of having you have the Venators, who are your hunter type characters. White collar crooks, who are good for if you need someone who's a little bit of a politician or something. And a witch. Witches, that's an interesting one. I think they'd be cursed in some way. We do have examples of cursed mortals. You have the Battleforged. I don't know exactly who they are. You have mounts, however, who, if I remember correctly, are dead, who are who are mortals who are like addicted to being possessed by the dead, and will like do anything to sort of trick dead into possessing them and then having control over them. P-Borgs are related to Painful Love, which I should do a stream on Painful Love at some point. Painful Love is a sort of ARG style website that has been up for Curseborne for a little bit. I debate if I should do it as a commentator or as someone pretending that it's actually real, because it might be fun to do that as like an acting thing. I might put up a poll for that. Red Riding Hoods, we had a little bit of a preview of them. They are people who survived an encounter with a curse, and using a curse like paraphernalia and things of that nature, they're able to create magical effects and things. Terraphiliacs, I think, are sort of like stalkers, and I forget who the betrayed are. A curse, we have a lot of these curse types. You have generic ones who are I believe, the Dead Clipe, the Core, the Outcast Apostate, the Primal Predator, and the Sorcerer Tyrants. The Core, I think. Oh no, the Hungry Parasite. Hungry Parasite, Dead Clipe, Primal Predator, Sorcerer Tyrant, Outcast Apostate. Those are the 5 like generic if you need a villainous accursed, you can use those. Then you have a lot of these like other types of characters who are more named characters. We have bar guests, crossing guardians, cursed playthings, which seem to be like possessed objects, I would say. Gargoyles, the Greys, which might be like gray aliens. Hobgoblins, the Host, which might be related to host form, I think. Imps, guardians, phantasms, fleshy zombies. I'm really like tied to the idea of doing sort of like, what do you call them? Creepypasta style villains. Usually, a creepypasta style villain takes a component of the digital media and mixes it in with the supernatural. So you have people who are live streaming their own deaths and things of that nature. It does get a little bit difficult for me to figure out what works best in that regard because you have things like was it of Jeff the Killer, creepypasta that gained popularity. Eh. Following posts by he is depicted as a serial killer. You also have your Slender Man type fictional character. I think if we go Wikipedia, we might be able to find a bunch of these. The Boogeyman is a classic type of character. I like the I like the various different like creatures that come up. And I guess you call them like a sort of like cryptozoological creature, but usually those are too tied to a specific location. Um, Internet, fictional stalkers, fictional serial killers, fictional hominoids, fictional demons. If I just go into a category of these pastas, Hero Brian is a creepy pasta. Hero Brian. A variety of them. Lavender Town Syndrome. I actually talked about Lavender Town Syndrome on this channel. I believe it was built around a phenomenon called the Tetra syndrome, which people might be less familiar with. Uh, Essentially, what would happen is you listen to the music for too long for like old RPGs and games, and it would get stuck in your head and cause you to keep hearing it constantly. And for Lavender Town Syndrome, the idea was if you heard it, you would commit suicide or something. But um, unfounded, it was part of a creepypasta story. But people talk about it, and I had such a weird experience with the music in Pokemon that I thought I'd give my 2 cents to that. Thank you. We have some various different ideas when it comes to what makes something a little bit creepy with the internet. Someone was talking about in a game I had posted up a bunch of questions about people's villains in their games, and there is a mascot horror amusement park mascot. This is something I could use as a villainous type character that maybe runs around in abandoned amusement park. Um, cool. hoping to cheer up the people who arrive, only to be disappointed in their lack of cheer. It uses a knife to give them a permanent bloody smile. Another option we have is getting, you have the various things of where you take an elevator to the 13th floor. Which allows you to teleport, or takes you to a location that doesn't necessarily exist in a building. And say this is a hotel for the damned. Each room is haunted by a different phantasm. So we can move away from silliness and go into a more serious take. So we can separate our ghosts into different eras. You can have a 1980, 1890s set of ghosts, 1920s, 1950s, and let's say 1970s, 1980s. We can do a gangster couple here. 1950s, we can have a governed man who was killed in a sting operation. 1970s, Black Widow character. I guess I'm cribbing a little bit too much from the Ghostbusters video game, if anyone's familiar with that, where they had a Black Widow cultist ghost character that was taking men to her hotel room to kill them. And then you have in the 80s, you can have like some sort of serial killer based around. Now, I wanted to think about someone like the Zodiac Killer or something, which I think the Zodiac Killer was 70s era, maybe. But I like that. The reason that serial killers talked about so much in the United States is just because never caught, and they left messages, encoded messages. But you can definitely have someone that's akin to that, where it's taking the iconography of something and perverting it. Not sure. In case, let's put down serial killer for the moment. So we have those. I'm gonna stop streaming now. Thank you if you're watching this afterwards. Thank you so much for watching. Hit me up on Patreon. We just had the Mage the Awakening episode 5, the final episode drop. It was originally only going to be a 3-part series, but we had 2 episodes we recorded which had some audio issues, so I dropped them just a couple weeks ago, I think. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good one.